Hello investigators and welcome to Until the End of Time. My name is Werner. Thank you for joining me. This is going to be another Investigator starter deck leaks video. However, it's going to be slightly different than my previous videos for a couple of reasons. The first being that since I haven't done one in a couple of weeks, there are far more cards than normal. As such, I will not be handling them in chronological order, but instead I will go down each faction and talk about the cards leaked for that faction as one block. The second thing is that because we are now approaching basically knowing the entire set, we are I believe 40 cards away as of yesterday, I have decided to take a little bit of time in this video to talk about the number crunch as well, meaning that I'm going to be talking about the cards we don't know and what we assume might be in those slots. Everything that I'm going to be talking about is based on the number crunch spreadsheet, which is shared in the link below, as well as all the images are on my Imgur albums, which are also found again in the description below. If you have any question about where to find any of this, look in the description. Well, let's get started with Nathaniel Cho, the Guardian. We have only received 2 new cards, and the reason for that is probably because when the leaks first started coming out, we got a lot of Nathaniel Cho cards on that very first day, which have mean that Nathaniel has basically, we've known a lot more of his cards since the start, so there's a bit of a catch up from all the other investigators to try to kind of finish out at the same time. The 2 cards we now are going to talk about is Evidence, level 1, and Mano a Mano, level 2. We know all of Nathaniel's level 0 cards, and we have only 4 cards unknown yet, all of them XP, and it's worth pointing out that there are at least 2 of those are going to be either 3 XP, 4 XP, or 5 XP, which means that we have some real powerhouses left to go. Now, Evidence level 1 is a very similar card to Evidence level 0. It is still a 1-cost event, 2 intellect icons, insight traded, and you play it after you defeat an enemy. It has fast. You discover 1 clue at your location, but here's the new text. If you have defeated enemies with a combined total of at least 4 printed health this turn, you get 2 clues instead. I think this is a really good upgrade. It's small, but it's significant. If you're willing to play around it, if you're willing to maybe absorb an attack so that you can leave an enemy around for 1 turn, so that if the next turn you draw another enemy, you can kill both of them, have that 4 health, and get 2 clues. It's pretty strong. Guardian is the faction that has the most trouble picking up clues, so more clue attack in Guardian is always a good thing. And I don't think it's a very dramatic change. Playing this for 1 clue is still reasonable. Playing this for 2 clues isn't going to, blow the game right open. It's not going to break anything. It is, it's small. It's only 1 XP. I kind of like it. I definitely think this will see some play at least. Next up, Mano a Mano level 2. This was actually spoiled today, or leaked today, I should say. And it is essentially the same card as Mano a Mano level 1, only it deals 2 damage. So play only as your first action, deal 2 damage to an enemy engaged with you. Action does not provoke attacks opportunity. Spirit and Bolt, 0-cost event, and it has a willpower and a combat icon. I think this card is infinitely better than level 1, because the difference between spending an action for 1 damage and spending an action for 2 damage is massive. Even in non-Nathaniel Guardians, or anyone really, the ability to deal 2 damage guaranteed to an enemy engaged with you is quite strong. It allows you to set up in situations where you might have to deal with multiple problems, right? You drew an enemy, your teammate drew an enemy, you're the fighter, you need to deal with these problems. Having this card to go, okay, the enemy I'm engaged with is just dead, now I'm going to deal with your problem. Quite strong. Leaves out the Chaos Bag out of the equation. Of course, in Nathaniel, this deals 3 damage, and that's pretty nuts as well. People were actually already talking about Mano a Mano level 1 in Nathaniel because that 2 damage suddenly starts becoming worthwhile, right? That's the point where spending an entire card and an action to deal with an enemy, to deal 2 damage to an enemy is worth it. And now we have that option, but better. At 2 XP, I see this card seeing play, definitely. Bunch. Also, even in off-class cards, or off-class Guardians, I can see this scene play, like Skids probably loves this card, right? You can just deal 2 damage to an enemy and then move on with your turn. Really like this design. In fact, it costs 0, pretty strong. Okay, that's it for the Guardians. Let's move on to the Seekers with Harvey Walters. There are 4 new cards from his deck. Tri-Stamped Curiosity, which is his signature weakness. Occult Invocation, Library Docent, and Foresight. We have 9 unknown cards left, 5 of which will be 0 XP cards, so we have quite a bit of 0 XP cards left here, and 4 XP cards. However, we already have everything above 3 XP confirmed. There are no more level 4 or level 5 cards possible, and I believe only 1 more possible level 3 card. We still have 4 cards that we do not know for sure, but we can kind of assume are going to be in there, and these are Feed the Mind level 0, Laboratory Assistant, Disc of Examina level 0, and Perception level 2. The first 3 we have seen in fanouts and images. The last one we haven't actually seen, which is Perception. However, given that we've seen both Overpower level 2, Unexpected Courage level 2, and Manual Dexterity level 2, it feels safe to say that it's probably going to be a full cycle, and Harvey will probably get the Perception. So first up, we have Tri-Stamped Curiosity, Treachery, Weakness, Flaw, Revelation. For every 3 cards in your hand, take 1 damage. I don't really like this weakness, I have to admit. This is going to do a lot of damage to you for doing something that you want your deck to do, because Harvey wants to draw lots of cards. And now that's potentially going to kill him, even at only 9 cards, which might not seem like a small amount, but for Harvey is really not that big of a deal. This deals 3 damage. A weakness that deals 3 damage on a 7 health Investigator is no joke, right? That's half your health basically gone. At 21 cards in hand, which seems like an absurd amount, but that's reachable. It just kills you in 1 shot if you don't have any soaks. And speaking of soaks, there's not a lot of damage soak in Seeker, right? And there's not a lot of like prevention or even healing in Seeking. So you're probably kind of forced to keep your hand small until you've seen this. But then if you're a Seeker and you go through your deck more than once, you might end up still getting killed by this quite frequently. And I don't really appreciate that. There are not a lot of solutions. Obviously, you might have a Guardian that can take the damage from you. One thing that people have actually already talked about is using the card Versatile, which is a permanent asset that lets you take a card from a different faction and bring in Deny Existence from the Mystic faction to cancel the damage, because there's no real ways to cancel weakness treacheries, especially on a Seeker, but there is a way to cancel the damage with Deny. So we'll have to see how this plays out. I feel like this definitely made Harvey a lot worse in my mind. I actually haven't played with him yet since we've seen the weakness, but his ability to just draw through his entire deck several times is just completely neutered by this, because you can't do it anymore. It's going to kill you. Next up, we have Occult Invocation. 2-cost event, combat and intellect icons, 0 XP. It is a spell. As an additional cost to play Occult Invocation, discard up to 2 cards from your hand. Fight. This attack uses intellect instead of combat. You get +1 intellect and do +1 damage for this attack, for each card discarded as part of the card's cost. So this seems like a pretty powerful card, but one with a reasonable cost, at least. It is able to deal 3 damage, which we've been seeing more and more recently, with events being able to deal 3 damage, and that being quite powerful. Spectral Razor especially has definitely shown that 3 damage is a thing that people want, assuming it's fairly costed, or at least costed cheaply enough. And this is sort of. The thing is that you do still need to have those 2 additional cards. And if you are not a deck that draws very aggressively, I don't know if this is a card you necessarily can play. Because if your cards in hand are mostly powerful things you still want to play, then maybe you don't want to play Occult Evocation. And also, if you're in a situation where you have played out most of your hand and then draw this while you need something to deal with an enemy, then this isn't going to help you. That being said, 2-cost events, 0 XP that can deal up to 3 damage is going to be powerful, and I think there's plenty of decks, especially in Seeker, that can take advantage. It is a spell, might be worth noting. I don't know how many Seeker cards care about it being a spell, but there's probably some Mystic overlap here and there. But yeah, compared to something like Bloodrite, which also does that, like discarding cards to deal damage, compared to I've Got a Plan, which fights with intellect, I think this is kind of a mix of both. And I think it's It's fairer than I think people recently have been talking about, because people were comparing this to Backstab, and Backstab's not that good. But this actually is... Yeah, I think this is not broken. I think it's just good. It does, again, kind of have Seeker bleed into that like fighting enemies thing, which they are historically supposed to be kind of bad at. They're still getting better at it. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's fine. Next up, we have Library Docent, level 1 card, which is a 1-cost asset, intellect and agility icons. It is ally and miskatonic traded. Reaction: after Library Docent enters play, return a tome asset you control to its owner's hand. Play a different tome asset by title from your hand, reducing its cost by 2. 1 health, 2 sanity, and takes up the ally slot. So the immediate comparison for a lot of people is, oh, it's calling in favors but for tomes. And it sort of is, but it's also quite different. So calling in favor lets you return an ally to your hand and then search your deck for another ally and play that card. And you get to reduce the cost by the cost of the ally you return to hand. Now the important differences here is that the library doesn't let you search your deck, you just have to play another tome from your hand. And the cost is always reduced by 2, which means that for returning more expensive tomes to your hand doesn't necessarily help you that much. However, I think this card does have some pretty useful applications. Of course, you have the I never know how to pronounce that word. The Fragments, the Book of Books, which lets you return a 1-cost asset to your hand, and then you can play something else, reducing it by 2, so that's decent. You have the Old Book of Lore and maybe similar tomes that have uses, like secrets or something, and you can return them to your hand to replay them and get the secrets. You can't replay them with the Library Docent ability, but you can replay them later. Of course, also if you have just your out-of-hand slots, right? This lets you pull an asset back without having to waste it. You get a little discount as well. As far as that ally slot's concerned, it's a bit of an issue, but I think a lot of investigators are going to be that run this are going to be running the Miskatonic archaeological funding. I think it's what's it called, which gives you 2 extra ally slots that can only be used for Miskatonic allies, and this is a Miskatonic ally, so you'll probably be fine. If you aren't running additional ally slots, though, beware. This is not an irrelevant fact. You do need that ally slot. Okay, then we have Farsight. Farsight level 4 asset, 2 cost, a willpower and a wild icon. It is a ritual, takes up the arcane slot, and it has a free triggered ability. During your turn, if you have 8 or more cards in your hand, exhaust it, play an event from your hand, paying its cost. This is a classic build around, which is to say that in a random deck that isn't built around taking advantage of Farsight, it's probably not that strong. However, in a deck that is designed to capitalize on Farsight's ability, it will probably pull its weight. The main strength here is just being able to play your assets or your events for free, because that's what it does ultimately. But you do have to have 8 cards in hand at least, and you're going to need to use that arcane slot. So there's a bunch of costs that make this a card that I wouldn't just jam into any random secret deck, but I'm sure there's going to be decks that just combine a bunch of powerful events and the ability to play them for free, just get you an extra action every turn. Seems quite good. The one struggle I have right now is that I'm trying to think of good Seeker events that don't already have fast, and I'm coming up a little short. So, I don't know, maybe come back to me on that one. And that was Seeker. So up next we have the Rogues. We have 5 new cards. 5. We have Streetwise level 0, Pilfer level 0, Lucky Cigarette Case level 3, Pilfer level 3, and Chuck Fergus. We're going to talk about the 2 Pilfers at the same time because they're very similar. We still have 10 unknown cards left, split halfway between XP cards and non-XP cards. However, we have seen basically the entire Rogue top end because everything above 2 XP has been confirmed already. So we know all the 3s, all the 4s, well, the 1-4 and the 1-5. It's actually kind of curious because a lot of people were expecting, Rogue, the big XP faction, to have a lot of high XP cards, but not really. It's been pretty mild. So Streetwise is a bit of an interesting card to discuss. A level 0, 0-cost asset with an intellect and agility icon is a talent. It has a free triggered ability to spend 2 resources. You get +2 intellect for the skill test, and you have a free triggered ability to spend 2 resources. You get +2 agility for the skill test. Now, obviously, this is based on Streetwise level 3, which is a permanent version that has the same abilities, only you get +3 instead of +2. Streetwise level 3 is very, very good. So good, in fact, that if you are using the optional taboo list, it will cost you 5 additional XP to put into your deck. And this is specifically why which normally I wouldn't really mention, because I don't think taboo is the default by which people should play or do play. But in this case, it's kind of relevant because Preston Fairmont, the millionaire from the Circle Undone, really likes Streetwise level 3, the permanent version, because it is a way for him to spend money to just boost his stat line, which is awful. It's 1-1-1-1. However, if you're playing Taboo Preston, you do not usually get access to Streetwise, or at least not as early as you normally would. So I definitely see a place for this new Streetwise in those kinds of decks, because it's at least something that you can put down, you can pump your money into. It is worse, it's definitely worse, but it might just, it'll tide you over for a while. Other than that, the economy boosters haven't really impressed people. This one is only 0 cost though, which is very different than most of the other ones, right? We have Hard Knocks, we have Arcane Studies, but those all cost 2 resources to play, so you're down 2 resources to even play the cards before you've actually bumped your stats. And I kind of like this. I definitely want to try this. I think some people were mentioning Jenny Barnes, who gets more money than everybody else, 1 resource extra a turn. And I can definitely see this card. I don't think it will be very impressive. I don't think it will blow people away, but I do think we'll see it in decks. We'll see it show up. Next up, we have Pilfer. Both level 0 and level 3 are 4-cost events with intellect and agility icons. They are tricks. And they read Investigate. This investigation uses agility instead of intellect. If you succeed, discover 2 additional clues at your location. And then the level 3 also reads, if you succeed by 2 or more, return Pilfer to your hand at the end of your turn. So the Pilfer level 3 is the same upgrade route as the Backstab level 3 we talked about last time, which is a card that I'm going to be touching on a little bit more in a minute when we talk about the new level 5 ally. I'll just want to judge Pilfer, and especially level 0, on its own merit for a bit, which is that it's expensive, but it's quite powerful. If you are in a 3 or 4 player group, the ability to get 3 clues at once is really strong, right? Ask people who've been using Rite of Seeking level 4 in those kinds of groups. They will tell you that's quite a powerful ability. Now, 4 resources is expensive, but one of the most used rogue events that get you clues right now is probably Intel Report, which is often going to be played as 4 resources, discover 2 clues, using that first reaction ability. And compared to other rogue events like Fallout or Eavesdrop, this definitely leans, to me at least, to the more straightforward and powerful effects, right? You get to use your agility, so if you have powerful agility boosting cards, great. And you just get to get 3 clues. The main drawback is it's still a skill test, right? You are paying 4 resources to potentially do nothing because you draw an autofill or you draw a really bad token and you do not get your clues. That being said, Rogue is the one faction where it being a skill test might also be a good thing, because you can use cards like Watch This or even Double or Nothing to get significant value out of that test. All that being said, what does that mean for Pilfer, at least level 0? I think you should try it. If you're in a 3 or 4 player group, you should definitely try it. In 2 player, it gets a little trickier because there's just going to be a lot of locations that only have 2 clues. And so it might not be worth running this if you don't have anything, if it's only ever going to get you 2 clues, because in that case, you should probably just be running Intel Report. The fact that you don't have to take a skill test there definitely outweighs the value there. We're talking more about the level 3 upgrade in a minute. First up, I want to mention Lucky Cigarette Case level 3, which is a 2-cost asset, 2 willpower icons. Oh, getting all over the place here. Willpower icons, item and a charm, and a reaction ability. After you succeeded a skill test by 1 or more, exhaust the Lucky Cigarette Case, search the top X cards of your deck for a card, draw it, and shuffle the remaining cards into your deck. X is the amount you succeeded by, and it takes up the accessory slot. This is a pretty great upgrade. The level 0 Lucky Secret Case is becoming one of the more played grow cards in the game, because you will often will succeed by 2 or more, and it just draws you a bunch of cards. This is that, but better. You get to search your deck for more cards and better cards and whatever you want. Funny enough, people actually mentioned it's probably not even the best upgrade for Winnie, because she draws so aggressively thanks to her ability that you might not need to search as much. But I can definitely see lots of rogues grabbing this and going, okay, I'm just gonna buy, exceptional cards. And I have 1 copy in my deck and it's super powerful if I can get it. And with this card, I can get it. So yeah, I'm thinking Tony, right? Tony has his guns, he needs his extra ammo, he might want some other cards to make sure he can run around and help everybody. This will get him. And it is a search effect, so if there was ever, a rogue seeker like Trish from the next expansion, then she could use the search effect on this to combo with research effects like Astounding Revelation. That seems really good to me. So we'll have to see how that last part plays out, because obviously we don't have Trish yet. But this seems like a good card. This seems like a card people are going to play. 3 XP is not nothing, but I think it's a good investment. Okay, Chuck Fergus, level 5 ally. Now we're talking. He is the O'Banion Driver, a 3-cost ally asset. Combat, Agility, Wild Icon, Ally and Criminal traits. Reaction: when you play a tactic or trick event, exhaust Chuck Fergus and choose 2. That's really important. Choose 2. The event gains fast, the events cost 2 fewer resources to play, or you get +2 skill value while performing a skill test during the resolution of that event. 2 health, 2 sanity. Now, we were talking about build-arounds with Farsight earlier, but this is a build-around, and this is a very good build-around. On his own, Chuck isn't that impressive. In fact, if they have no other cards, it's just a 3-cost asset at 2 health and 2 sanity. Whatever. His power is in the ability to make very expensive, very powerful events very cheap. So we talked about Pilfer. I've previously talked about Backstab, and the things I said about Backstab were, why do you want to have a succeed by 2 effect on a card that brings it back to hand if you don't have the money to keep paying for it? Well, I guess they also figured that out. FFG went, maybe this is a problem. And so they printed Chuck and they went, yeah, this probably fixes it. And guess what? It probably does. Basically, with Chuck, you can backstab for only 1 resource every single turn. Right? Or, talking about Pilfer, you can play Pilfer for 2 resources and get 3 clues every single turn. And that's just using one of the 3 modes, because you get to pick a second one as well. So if you're not sure you're going to be succeeding by 2 to bring it back, you can give yourself +2 skill value, which means you're more likely to succeed by 2 and get those benefits. If you're just like, I'm probably going to pass by 2 or maybe even more because I'm a rogue and I throw my entire hand into this test, you can give it fast. You get basically get an extra action. This card's insane, right? Right now, there's not a ton of trick and tactics, although I know people have been looking through them and thinking of combos ever since they saw them. There's actually some pretty crazy ones. I heard somebody talking about First Watch, and if it works the way we want it to, it actually means that you can get +2 skill value while resolving First Watch, which then gives you +2 during all of the encounter cards you draw during First Watch. But, timing window on that one is still out. We'll have to figure it out. But basically, Chuck is he's a build-around, right? He's not going to be amazing in every rogue deck. He's going to be amazing in the rogue deck that is built around tricks and tactics, or tricks or tactics, and using them every turn, or using lots of them, and making them very cheap, making them very powerful. Love this card. His 5 XP is a lot. That's the one thing I will say. If you want to have, Chuck plus Pilfer plus Backstab, like you're in pretty deep as far as XP goes. So make sure to pick up that Charon's Oval. And that's the rogues. Moving on to the mystics, we have 3 new cards since we last spoke. Parallel Fates, Voice of Ra, and Clairvoyance level 3. We have 9 unknowns left, of which only 2 are 0 XP cards, and 7 are XP cards. We have a lot of Mystic XP cards left to go. One of them is also unconfirmed, which is the Guts level 2 Pretty likely it's going to be a cycle, so put it in there already, but might not be. The thing about the 2 0 XP cards is they're probably going to be 1 event and 1 skill, or 2 events. We don't get any more assets. And there are still 3 slots that could potentially be level 5 left. Pretty good guess that that might be the new Azure Flame, Clairvoyance, and Ineffable Truth all at level 5. Because it would be weird to have a suite of new spell assets that don't have level 5 versions. So pretty safe guess there, but might not be. We'll have to see. First up, we have Parallel Fates, a 0-cost event with a wild icon, 0 XP, and it is an augury. Look at the top 4 cards of the encounter deck, reveal a random chaos token from the chaos bag. If it has a skull, cultist, tablet, elder thing, or autofill symbol, shuffle those cards into the encounter deck. Otherwise, return them to the top of the encounter deck in any order. Now this is pretty close to First Watch, which I actually talked about a little bit ago. It lets you manipulate the top of the encounter deck. Now First Watch is fast, and First Watch lets you divide the cards as you wish. This is a lot worse because you have to do it ahead of time, and there's also that random chaos token. But it does have a couple of niche reasons why it is actually kind of interesting. First, the Parallel Fates always looks at 4 cards. In lower player counts, that makes it look at more cards than First Watch. First Watch always only looks at the number of cards equal to the number of players. So in a 2-player game, Parallel Fates lets you set up for 2 turns instead of 1. The second thing is that the ordering of this effect is actually very important. First, you look at the top 4 cards in the encounter deck. Then you reveal a random token. Now, if you're playing Jacqueline or some other mystic that has access to multiple token reveals, at this point you may want to set up a situation where you actually do draw a special token so you can shuffle those cards into the deck. Let's say you draw, or you look at the top 4 and you see Ancient Evils, really nasty enemy, and some card that surges. And you go, I don't want to deal with any of these. I'm just going to go fish for a special token, shuffle those cards into the encounter deck, and I'm hoping that a random 4 cards is going to be better than the 4 I just saw. Now that's tricky, right? You don't usually want to spend 0, or you don't want to spend an action in a card to look at the top 4 cards in the encounter deck and shuffle the encounter deck. But I can imagine situations where that is a good play. However, this card really doesn't do anything unless you have some kind of multiple token reveal, because you want to make sure that either way, it does the way you want it to. You don't want to draw a special token if you just want to set at the top, and if you do want to get rid of them, you want to make sure you can draw a special token. So unless you have kind of special token reveals, skip on this card. Next up, we have Voice of Ra, a 0-cost, 0 XP event, 1 wild or willpower icon, spell traded, which is actually really important in Mystic, and it has the text, gain a resource. Reveal 3 random tokens from the chaos bag. For each skull, cultist, tablet, elder thing, or autofill symbol revealed, gain an additional 2 resources. So this is a very weird economy card. On average, roughly speaking, revealing 3 random tokens will get you 1 of the symbols, maybe a little bit less than that. So you have I believe it's about, you have a 4 and 5 chance of revealing at least one other. At that point, this is an emergency cache. Now, I'm personally not a huge fan of emergency cache. I think it is a card that isn't really good enough, but this is an emergency cache that has the spell trade, so you can find it with Arcane Initiate. It also has a willpower icon, so there's some stuff going on. Of course, if you have multiple token revealers, like Jacqueline or Olive McBride, then you can potentially reveal more tokens, and using those abilities, get more resources. I'm not entirely sold on this card. I think the amount of effort required to make it pay off enough is a little bit too high, because you often, if you are including Olive and you're using Jacqueline's ability, that means you might have other things you wanted to do with those abilities as well, and now you can't. You have to spend it on your money card. Also, I think Uncage the Soul is just a really strong card. Got double willpower icons. It lets you play a spell or ritual from your hand, reducing its resource cost by 3. And it also gives you the action back basically to play that card. So I usually really like running Uncage the Soul in my Mystic decks. But I can say, Voice of Ra does have very interesting applications, right? It is a 0-cost event that could easily get you 5 or 7 resources if you have, enough special tokens that you can grab. So there's something there for sure. we're just going to have to wait and see if that's actually, how that actually plays out at the table. If taking a turn off from your Olive and your Jacqueline ability to play this is worth it. Then we also have Clairvoyance level 3, which is a giant Snorefast. Okay, it's a little cross perhaps, but basically it is a 3 XP card. It gets 1 additional willpower icon, and it gives you +2 willpower during the investigation, but otherwise it's still just a 4-cost asset that has 3 uses. Action, spend a charge, investigate, you use willpower instead of intellect. If you succeed, you get an extra clue, and if you reveal an Elder Sign, +1 or 0 token, you take a horror. So this really isn't that big of a shakeup. The only thing that's kind of surprising about this card is that it's level 3 instead of level 2, because Rite of Seeking goes from 0 to 2 to 4. So that leaves people to believe that perhaps Clairvoyance will go from 0 to 3 to 5. And we'll have to see what that means for the level 5 version. I personally would like it if it wasn't just reveal or get 2 additional clues, because that makes the card really strong at 3 or 4 player, but less good at 2 player. Again, we don't know yet, and we don't even know if we'll get a Clairvoyance level 5, although it's a pretty safe guess. That's the Mystics done. On to the best class, it's Survivor. Stella Clark, we have 4 new cards, one that I will not attempt to pronounce. It is the Phobia of Failure, I'll tell you, that's what that word means, which is her random basic weakness that comes in that pack. Cheers Keepsake level 1, Leather Coat level 1, and Chainsaw level 4, which the last what you all have seen if you watched my video yesterday. 2 days ago. What day is it? We have 8 unknown cards left. 5 of them are level 0, so we have a lot of level 0 goodness left. And we have 3 XP cards left, but they're all level 2, which is kind of interesting. We also have 2 unconfirmed cards, which is Granny Orn level 0 and Rabbit's Foot. We know that, we know what Rabbit's Foot level 0 does. We haven't seen what Granny Orn level 0 does, but we did see an image of it in one of the fanouts, so presumably, we have an idea of where that's going, and we also already know all the level 3 plus cards. Go figure. So Atychiphobia, I guess is how you would pronounce that. It's the fear of failure. You put it into play in your threat area, and after you fail a skill test, take a horror. Action to discard it. I think this card is fine. In most investigators, it will actually be a slightly milder Chronophobia. So Chronophobia is from the Dunwich Legacy, and it just deals 1 direct horror at the end of every turn. There's also one in the core set, I believe it's called Psychosis, that has a similar effect. Might be Hypochondria instead. I think it's Psychosis. Basically, this is going to deal you a bunch of horror. On higher difficulties it gets nastier, because you'll be failing more tests, but unless you are playing Literal Stella, who likes to fail a lot of tests, this is probably not going to deal you more than 1 horror a turn, probably less. It's also not direct horror, which is very relevant. Soaks can be used to keep this at bay, and if worse comes to worse, you can just action clear it. So I think this is a kind of mild weakness, which is okay. It's actually really bad in Stella, but other than that, it's probably fine. Next up, we've got 2 cards that I want to talk about together, which is Leather Coat level 1 and Cherished Keepsake level 1. Both of them are upgrades on their level 0 variants, and they have either 4 health or 4 sanity soak, 1 XP, 1 icon. They take up the body and accessory slot, and the text forced when the card is defeated by damage or horror, exile it. So I personally think that these cards are great. I've heard some people in the community saying that they don't like them. I personally think they are great. Basically, in my mind, they are already better than level 0 Leather Coats and Keepsakes, because you can put 3 damage or 3 horror on them. They will not get exiled. Still better. If you ever get to discard them while they have damage or horror on them, that's awesome, because then they just go away and then you can replay them. You're a survivor, you can probably recur them, and they can soak more damage and horror. And now one of the things people were talking about is, why do you want to spend XP on soaks, right? Why do you want to buy this card that doesn't really do anything? It just prevents you from dying, or it like takes a bit more damage and horror. And my first thought was immediately went to Boundary Beyond, which is a scenario that can beat the living shit out of people. And this lets you go, I'm not going to die. Don't care what you do to me, I'm not going to die because I've got 4 health, 4 sanity soak. Put these things down, give me your best shot, hit me with whatever you got. I'm not going to die. I might have to exile 2 cards, but that's okay because I can tank so much more punishment than I normally could. 4 health and 4 sanity is half an investigator, right? Most investigators get like 7-7-ish numbers. Stella gets 8-8. So this is a huge amount of damage in horror. You can just absorb and don't die, right? You can't die. And even if you get it exiled, you can just put in the level 0 version again, and you still have the same reasonable functioning deck. Now, the one thing that people will say, and that they are right about, is that you probably shouldn't buy this upgrading Yorick, because Yorick is very much about replaying Lettercoat and Keepsake to keep the soak coming. You can't do that if your assets are exiling themselves, but I was thinking that you play this in basically anybody else, but specifically someone like Kelvin, right? Kelvin likes taking a lot of damage in horror early so that he can build his stats up, but then once he gets up there, he doesn't want to just die, so he needs to play soaks, and these are very powerful soaks. And it's only when you get the 4 damage or 4 horror that they actually exile themselves. So I think you'll be able to play quite a few scenarios where these 2 take 3 damage and 3 horror, and then just sit there. They don't do anything. And it's perfect. One thing that I will point out is that we saw Deja Vu, which is a card that reduces the cost of exile cards when you repurchase them. And I don't think these are your Deja Vu targets, right? I don't think you'll be exiling these every scenario, so I don't think you can reliably use them to basically get benefits from Deja Vu. Now, I hope that means there's still 1 or 2 exile cards left to come, but we'll have to find out. Okay, enough about a card that I personally feel very strongly about. Let's talk about Chainsaw, which is a card everybody feels strongly about, mostly in the "this card is awesome" category. It's the Survivor Lightning Gun. It's got 3 combat icons, it's a 4-cost asset for 4 XP, takes up 2 hand slots. It's an item, tool, weapon, and melee traded. It uses 3 supplies, you spend a supply as an action to fight, you get +2 combat and deal +2 damage with the attack. If the attack fails, either place a supply back on the chainsaw or deal 1 damage to the attacked enemy. I've already talked at length about this card in the previous video, but it's so good. It's literally, I think, the best card they've printed for Yorick since they printed Active Desperation. This card is so bonkers fun, right? It is just the big weapon in Survivor now. It is really strong, it's really fun. It cuts things to pieces, and when you miss, you just get to do it again. And then you throw the chainsaw at their head, and then you replay it from your discard pile, because that's what survivors do. Any questions? Didn't think so. I don't think there's anything left to say. I mean, people have been talking about, what's the stupid card called? Well Prepared, which gives you bonuses on your tests equal to the number of skill icons, so this gives you +3 combat. That's neat. People have been talking about how you can put supplies on this. Awesome. But really, it's a chainsaw. You don't need me to tell you that the chainsaw is great. You know the chainsaw is great, and the chainsaw is great. Ending it on a high note. Thank you very much for watching. This has been super fun, and I'm glad to be doing this again. Links are going to be in the description below for all of the daily leaks. Each known card in the Investigator starter decks sorted by deck. So you can just go to like the Nathaniel deck and just scroll down and see the cards that FFG has previewed, the cards that the podcast have previewed, and all the leaks sorted in order. As well as, if you haven't seen them yet, the Return to the Forgotten Age cards have all been leaked. I've also got an Imgur album of that. Link is in the description. I do want to go, before I go, mention that I probably won't be doing weekly videos for these anymore. Part of the problem is that just there's not that much to talk about sometimes, and having to do these weeklies wasn't really working. So I'm thinking it's probably going to be, bi-weekly or just whenever I feel like it, really. But when I know I at least have some content to fill the video with, we have about 40 cards left to go. So say that I do one every 2.5 weeks. I can do 3 videos, basically. 2 videos? I'm bad at math. Don't ask me. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I do have a bunch of other videos I want to keep making. I still have a Stella Forgotten Age campaign I have to get back to. But thank you very much for watching. Please leave whatever reactions you have in the comments below. I read them all. I'm always deeply touched when I get comments from you. Thank you very much. And I'll be seeing you until the end of time.